Okay, guys, this is your tired teacher back again, and today we are talking about a very well-known topic of the Gilded Age, which is politics of the Gilded Age, or rather, a time where everything was just corrupt. So, all of these presidents that we see here, guys, we are going to fly through them rather quickly. I mean, they do nothing, okay? Gilded Age politics doesn't do much. So let's figure out what the big issue is with Gilded Age politics. So first up, here's what we got going on. So our big political issues that we're going to have during the Gilded Age is, stuff like civil service, currency, tariff legislation. Voter turnout is pretty freaking high for the Gilded Age. I mean, as high as 80%, but there's also a lot of voter fraud that takes place as well. Because people, let's face it, could vote more than once. There's not great record keeping at that time, no voter IDs or registration. It's just you show up, you vote, done. So stuff like voting the graveyard would be kind of a tactic that political machines would use to, well, cast more votes for the politicians that they support. So, yeah, they would go around the graveyard, take it down dead people's names, and then telling someone to vote as a dead person. So, there's going to be a split in who supports what party. The Republican Party is mainly supported by northern white Protestants, black men from the North and the South, and Union Civil War veterans. The Democratic Party is mainly going to be situated in the South amongst whites, Roman Catholic, and immigrants from Eastern and Southern Europe. They're also going to be part of the Democratic Party. So a lot of the big cities were run by the Democratic Party. Party bosses like Boss Tweed, right? And they build up these big political machines to keep themselves in power. So we'll be going back to Boss Tweed in this PowerPoint as well, just to remind you guys how freaking corrupt things were. So as we move on, you could see that we need some big government at this time. I mean, we have this rise in federal revenue, rise in government employees that coincide with each other. So a lot of this is due to the rapidly expanding economy. So we gotta govern over the rapidly, industrializing and urbanization of the nation. So government's gonna get a little bit more complicated. I mean, we're gonna need the large bureaucracy, increased taxes to support the number of government employees at all levels, municipal, county, state, and federal. So, I mean, yeah, it's kind of like we're growing too fast for us to really keep up. Kind of like how we had the problems of the cities where, we had to build tenements to keep up with the housing situation, but the tenements were god-awful. We kind of do the same thing with politics. We put god-awful people in charge, like Boss Tweed and the political machines. So, when it comes to presidents, though, really, they don't do much. Starting off with Grant. I mean, yeah, he tries to, go against stuff like the KKK in the South and whatnot. He is a pretty honest guy, but he surrounds himself around a bunch of shady people. Shady. And so they do take advantage of this, and there's a lot of corruption that goes on in his presidency. So, yeah, even historians will say, yeah, Grant's presidency, freaking corrupt because of the shady people he kept at his side. But Grant is more known for Reconstruction and how the radical Republicans kind of ran the show during his presidency. But really, Grant don't do much. It's more so ridden by scandal, right? Again, he kind of does too little too late. I mean, the 15th Amendment does become part of the Constitution at this time, but as far as his presidential acts, he passes the Enforcement Act, the Second Enforcement Act, the KKK Act. He's reelected for a second term, but like I said, it's going to be ridden by scandal. And well, when it comes to Reconstruction, the Redeemers are going to take over anyways. I mean, it's whatever good progress happened just got reversed. But more about these scandals, though. I mean, we've got 3 big ones here. Well, 4 actually. The Black Friday scandal. So this happens in 1869. James Fisk and Jay Gould, we talked about them before with the robber baron section. They tried to corner the gold market because they thought the government would pay back credit with gold. So the credit that, they had during the Civil War. So they tried to bribe Grant's brother-in-law, who encouraged Grant to appoint him to the Treasury. So Fisk and Gould would get the insider scoop pretty much when the government was going to sell some gold so that they could profit from it. Grant learns about this, and he was able to sell enough gold to prevent the major financial disaster for the government that was probably going to happen had Gould and Fisk had their way. But yeah, the dude's brother-in-law. Come on now. Okay, the Credit Mobilier scandal. We have already talked about that before. The Union Pacific, who was controlled by Thomas Durant, basically set up a fake company, Credit Mobilier of America. It gave contracts to build the railroad. They sold and gave their shares in the construction to influential congressmen so that they could keep striking up deals. And there's so many congressmen implicated in this. So, yeah, because of this scandal, the government lost out on a lot of money. Alright, and then we got the whiskey ring scandal. So this one is with Benjamin Bristow, Grant's 3rd Secretary of Treasury. He found out a group of distillers were falsifying some reports with whiskey. They cheated the government out of millions of tax dollars. And a lot of Grant's people were involved in this scandal. So even though they had a whole bunch of evidence against, Grant's personal secretary, Orville Babcock, he was still acquitted and resigned. So, dude, corruption everywhere. Alright, then we got finally the Belknap bribery scandal. In 1867, Secretary of War William Belknap was under investigation for getting bribes in connection with an Indian agency. So, yeah, he resigned from Congress before they could impeach him. Dude, scandal. Like I said. Alright, one and done, guys. We already went through Grant. Alright, let's go through the next one. Rutherford B. Hayes. So, Hayes doesn't do much either. Seriously, the only thing he does? Compromise in 1877. He ends Reconstruction. One more. Done. Alright. Here's his electoral college map. You know that this one ended up in a tie, so it went to Congress, right? And it came down to a couple of votes that Southern Democrats had, were deciding on, and basically struck a deal. They're like, hey, Republican Party, you want your boy in the White House? You want Hayes in the White House? Then end some Reconstruction. Deal, compromise, done. Reconstruction is over, and that is all she wrote for Hayes. Right? Garfield. Dude, this is already president number 3. We really haven't accomplished much. Alright, Garfield dies in office. So, yeah, okay. Moving on. President number 4. But let's talk a little bit about Garfield's death, though, because that kind of is important. So, Charles Guiteau, he has a history of mental illness. He's the one who shot Garfield. And because he thinks that God told him to shoot the president. So, the doctors search around Garfield and, of course, not sterilizing anything, just digging their hands in, all cool. And he's going to die from the infection that develops 2.5 months later. He's already dead. So Garfield's death, though, is going to shake things up a little bit because that guy that shot him was passed up for a civil service job. or rather a government job. And this really shakes up things because they're going to pass the Pendleton Act, which is going to call for civil service now when it comes for government jobs, which means you got to pass the exam in order to get the job, instead of like the spoil system and patronage that happened before. We're cutting that stuff out. So now you got to pass the test, get hired because you're actually qualified. So this was enacted by Garfield's vice president, which is President Arthur now. So, yeah, ending the spoil system was probably for the best. And now we actually have civil service reform. So speaking of Garfield, all right, he is president number 4, technically. Yep, he's 4. So, Arthur was president after Garfield, right? Garfield got shot, so president number 4. Okay, Chester Arthur is going to have the Chinese Exclusion Act passed under his presidency, the Pendleton Act, and he also has the Tariff Act to lower tariffs. Pretty much that's it. Yeah. At this time, guys, Congress is just like, dude, nothing's getting done in Congress. There's either gridlock or just corruption galore, man. You can see here in this political cartoon, Arthur is just like banging on the cymbal right there, like, come on, wake up, wake up. Nothing's going on here. But yeah, the thing that he's most well known for, besides the Pendleton Act for civil service, is, Chinese exclusion, which we have talked about when we talked about the West. So, yeah, 10 years, Chinese are excluded. All right, let's go on to president number 5, Grover Cleveland. He is non-consecutive, right? He's our only non-consecutive president. So his first term is from 1885 to 1889. His second term is from 1893 to 1897. So he is going to actually have something good passed during his presidency, the Interstate Commerce Act, which is supposed to regulate railroads. But Congress does not use it for that. It uses stuff like the Interstate Commerce Act. And, we'll see right now with the next president, the Sherman Antitrust Act. Instead of going after big business, Congress kind of uses them to go after labor unions. Lord. Tell you guys, corruption galore. So, okay, that's Cleveland's first term. Here's your electoral map in case you want to see that. But dude, seriously, none get done. Alright. So, president number, where are we at, 5 now? 6? Dude. There's just so many one-term presidents in the Gilded Age, and they all really don't do much. Alright, here we go. Here's Sherman Antitrust Act with President Harrison. So here's our little break in between Cleveland's 2 terms. So Harrison, he tries to improve the infrastructure of the nation, and a good thing gets passed, the Sherman Antitrust Act, which is supposed to get rid of monopolies and actually, help out with big business. But, dude, government uses this to break up labor unions. No, that's the wrong thing to break up. You break up big business like, Standard Oil. You break that crap up with the Sherman Antitrust Act. You do not break up labor unions. Yeah, they would use it as justification to break up strikes and, go after labor unions. Dude. Alright, so there's a big tariff that gets passed under Harrison, and it's going to lead to some unpopularity on his part. But anyways, alright, that's all she wrote for Harrison. Okay, let's go back to Cleveland. Cleveland round 2. Cleveland round 2 has an economic crisis that happens. In 1893, there's a panic of 1893. It's the worst thing we've ever seen, ever, up until the Great Depression. And what does he do? None. Come on, it's laissez-faire. Hands off. Oh yeah, the market will fix itself. Bro, you got people starving in your streets and stuff. Come on, buddy. Let's do something. But staying true to the times does nothing. So he tries to maintain the gold reserves. He repeals the Sherman Silver Purchase Act, which is going to really piss off a bunch of farmers, which we'll see probably at the end of the presentation for today, because I have a feeling we'll go into populism as well today. And yeah, he sends the troops out to break up some strikes. So labor does not like Cleveland at all. All right. Rounding out the Gilded Age presidents is William McKinley. William McKinley is basically like the big business president. For real. The dude just sat on his porch during the campaigns like, yeah, speech. Instead of his opponent, William Jennings Bryan, who was actually like out on the campaign trail, giving speeches, going all over the place. This dude wins. So, yeah, this is kind of a good thing for big business because I really like this guy. William Jennings Bryan wanted to go after big business. But unfortunately for big business, he is gonna get shot by an anarchist during his second term, the beginning of his second term. And big business's worst nightmare, his vice president, Theodore Roosevelt, becomes president. And that kind of signifies the end of Gilded Age politics as far as the presidential level goes, and ushers in our new era, which is the progressive era. But we still got more, guys. So just hold that thought. We're getting into the progressive era probably next presentation. So stay tuned, all right? Because like I said before, Gilded Age is all of the freaking problems ever. Progressive era, we're making progress. It's the solutions. So if you view it like that, guys, you should be A-okay. But alright, let's actually talk about these two acts that we had mentioned. The Interstate Commerce Act and the Sherman Antitrust Act. So the ICC right here, which was developed by the Interstate Commerce Commission Act, all right, is supposed to be a regulatory agency. It's supposed to like crack down on the abuses from the railroad monopolies because they regulated prices, and they were supposed to regulate the prices of the railroads. The railroads would do outrageous things like pull their prices together and charge like crazy ass rates. So the ICC was supposed to crack down on all of that, all of the discrimination, all of the pooling, all of the bad, shady business that railroad monopolies would do. Price fixing and cutting and like all that. So there were some problems though with this law. Many of the terms written in it kind of contradicted each other. Some provisions stimulated competition, and others kind of penalized it. So really it was not effective. But it is an important step though, because this is a step in the right direction as far as regulating business. Congress was starting to think a bit better about it now. And maybe actually regulating big business is like a good idea, because big business, let's face it, was running the country. So it's going to be the model for later regulatory agencies that we will see during the progressive era, but for now, it's like good intentions, but the results are kind of off a little. The one that's going to be a bit better is the Sherman Antitrust Act. But again, guys, this was not used for its intended purposes at the beginning. So this is the first act that's going to actually go against monopolies and their business practices. So yeah, we're looking at you, Rockefeller, at you, JP Morgan, even you, Carnegie. Definitely you, Jay Gould. I mean, this was supposed to crack the whip and actually stop these abuses. So it wasn't immediately effective, though, because it lacked the definition of what exactly a trust is. We know now it's a monopoly, all right? It lacked the definition for what combination is, conspiracy, and, well, monopoly itself. So, dude, even the Supreme Court is gonna, like, really go against this. in the case of United States versus EC Knight Company, here's what the Supreme Court decides. Mind you, this is the same Supreme Court that decided Plessy versus Ferguson. So that should give you an indication of how these guys are going to roll. But okay, in EC Knight Company versus U.S., the American Sugar Refining Company was not violating the law because it only controlled 98% of all sugar refining in the U.S. Since there was 2% competition, it's not technically a monopoly. If you guys could see my face right now, I am just like, bruh, what? If you own 98% of the business, there's no way that 2% is going to be able to compete with you. Therefore, monopoly. But not according to the Supreme Court. So, dude, no wonder. I mean, this is just nuts. Just freaking nuts. But, dude, that's Gilded Age politics. So, really, it's not until Theodore Roosevelt where he actually turns this around and actually uses it to go after monopolies with his trust busting that he did in his presidency. Subsequently, President Taft would do the same thing, and President Wilson will add to this with the Clayton Antitrust Act. But, bruh, during the Gilded Age, not used quite how it was intended, because really, when we think about Congress, here's who's really running Congress. It's big business. I mean, look at all those big-bellied trusts over there looking like money bags. Standard Oil Trust, Copper Trust, Steel Beam Trust, iron, sugar, tin, coal, paper bag, envelope, salt, nail, steel plow. And they're all coming in through the entrance for the monopolists into the Senate, but where is the people's entrance? It's closed. You see that up there? It's closed. So really, who is controlling politics at this time? Big freaking business. Senate did not have to answer to the people because we do not have the 17th Amendment in the Constitution yet. That's going to come later when we talk about our next topic. Farmers. See, I told you guys we're going to come back around to the West, mainly the Midwest. Because, let's face it guys, pissed off farmers get stuff done. So, let's go ahead and find out what is angering these farmers and essentially what's going to kickstart reform at the government level. So, we got to learn about the Grange, we got to learn about the Farmers Alliance, and especially about the Populist Party. So, let's review a little bit, guys. Because a lot of these factors are going to make sense. Alright, so here's the situation for farmers during the mid-19th century, so right after the Civil War. Alright, a bunch of people had been demanding food and stuff during the Civil War because, well, we got to feed the troops, and people are eating anyways, right? So farmers are going to try to meet that demand. So they buy up a whole bunch of, like, farmland, farm equipment, like, all of this stuff, because they're even exporting crops and such around the world. But there's a lot of instability in world markets at times, so they were kind of subject to that often. And this new technology that they're buying up costs money. So they're going to have to borrow a lot of money from the banks. And plus, to purchase that land, right, they're going to have to take out a bunch of loans. So this is about the time that other countries dabble in large-scale farming, like Argentina, Canada, Australia. So essentially, the world market is now flooded with agricultural products, which means bad business for U.S. farmers, because now their crop prices have been lowered, so they are not making as much money. Because, let's face it, agriculture has a shelf life, right? You can't indefinitely store all of these things. So, you've got to just sell off what you got, right? And lower prices, less money. So, as this farm income drops, they're going to blame people who have been screwing them over. Big business. Railroads, because railroads were charging them outrageous rates to ship their crops back and forth. Wall Street bankers. They blame all these guys for their declining incomes because the banks sure as hell weren't like letting up on farmers. Big business wasn't letting up on farmers, like purchasing all like the steel plows and stuff, right? And railroads sure as hell weren't letting up on farmers, so they were getting attacked on 3 fronts. So farmers are like, you know what? Hey, we need to organize, man. We need to form our own political party and have this third-party outlook on politics, because at that time they felt that Democrats and Republicans were just as bad, and they didn't pay attention to farmers. So their big issue is going to be the coinage of silver. They are demanding this because they feel if there's more money in the money supply, it's going to be better for farmers, because generally, if there's more money in the money supply and it's circulating around, that is a good thing for people who borrow money. It's a bad thing for banks. It's good for people who borrow money because it causes a bit of inflation. You'll learn more about that with economics, guys, but just trust me, a little bit of inflation is not a bad thing, especially for people who borrow money. So farmers get smart and they're going to team up with labor unions, and ultimately this Populist Party is going to stir the pot and get like progressive style reforms on the national level. So remember, we already talked about reformers like in the cities trying to clean up the cities. Now with farmers and like labor unions in the mix too, it's like everybody's pissed off at this point that they want to get like stuff done, stuff changed. All right. So remember, agriculture does change like incredibly during this time period. And westward expansion is also going to increase the amount of farmland that they could purchase, all that farming machinery we just talked about, and then new scientific research at these Morrill land grant colleges leads to more agricultural advancements. But yes, like all of this stuff definitely hurts the farmer in the long run though, because, I mean, they got lower crop prices, so they can't afford to pay back the money that they owe for all of that new equipment and new land. So all of this cool stuff had a negative effect on farmers. And in this political cartoon, you can see the poor farmers like begging the wealthy industrialists for like help. It's like, come on, dude, we feed you. So you can see how much agricultural output we were producing, but I mean, yeah, crop prices are going to fall. There's going to be a period of deflation, which really hurts borrowers of money. So since farmers were borrowing a lot of money, it hurts them completely. And I mean, really, like, this country was founded on like this whole agrarian myth, right? Thomas Jefferson was like, yeah, we're going to be a nation of farmers. So farmers kind of take this a bit personal, rightfully so. I mean, their income's dropping, the railroads are just relentless with what they're charging them, corporations aren't giving a crap. I mean, even politics. Like, politics is like, big business does its thing. So yeah, these guys are super freaking upset. So where this first like starts off with is with the Greenback Party. These guys are upset because the government stopped printing out paper money, greenbacks, basically your dollar bills. And the paper money had been helping farmers because, like I said, more money in the money supply leads to better things for borrowers because it feels like they're not paying back as much. That's kind of like what inflation does. So this party, the Greenback Party, is very anti-monopolies. They don't really like banks. They view them as like part of the problem. And they do receive like 13.8% of the national vote in 1878. So these guys are going to eventually become part of the larger People's Party, which is the Populist Party. But on the front with the farmers, though, you're going to see big movements happen with the Grange. Oliver Hudson Kelley is the one who starts up the Grange movement. And he really wants to help improve the lives of farmers and all of this social isolation and loneliness of rural life. And essentially he wants farmers to locally organize and like help each other out. So they really kind of got together and they're like, yeah, we hate these high tariffs because manufactured goods are more expensive because of that. They're really arguing against what the railroads are doing with the freight charges for shipping. You know, they don't like the fact that wheat prices are falling and their mortgages have been increasing. So they set up these co-ops that are going to act as like a marketing system for them. They also have like grain silos and stuff to store grain, processing plants, factories, grain elevators, all of this stuff. So the Grange isn't as successful with this aspect because they don't have the business experience needed to run this venture. But how they are successful, though, is with politics. Straight up. The Grange enters politics at this time as well. So Granger laws are going to be passed in western states. They're going to have like more of this public regulation of shipping rates and operating practices of the railroads. Even the Supreme Court is going to uphold stuff like this with Munn versus Illinois, which upholds the right of state legislatures to regulate the railroads and, well, their shipping rates. The Grange sees this as like a huge victory. And they're going to, organize even further. But in the 1880s, the Granger laws are eventually struck down by other Supreme Court cases that come up. So really, regulating railroads would have to come through Congress now, not through the states. So no wonder farmers are like, yeah, bro, stuff is corrupt. Citizens of the country, you need to know how corrupt your railroads are. And, this farmer here is trying to help these people not get run over by the railroads. So, the Grange is going to become bigger. It's going to eventually evolve into the Farmers Alliance. Farmers Alliance is more kind of like regional. The Grange would be local. So, Farmers Alliances come out of that Grange movement. And in the 1890s is where we're going to have big numbers with the Farmers Alliances. About 1.5 million members from New York to California. 3 regional branches. And there's even a Colored Farmers National Alliance that has 1 million members in its ranks. So the Farmers Alliances are going to call for the regulation of railroads because we've already established how bad railroads were treating farmers. They want more inflation in the currency. So this time, instead of greenbacks, they're going to push to have silver put into the currency so that it can cause inflation, which will provide that debt relief for farmers. They also push for lowering of high tariffs. They wanted government-owned storehouses, low-interest lending facilities, and the Farmers Alliance really, is able to pick up some seats in the legislature. 12 state legislatures, 6 governors, 5 senators, 46 congressmen, so this is making some waves already. But the big movement is this right here, the Populist Party. Because farmers were really hurting by the late 1880s because of a drought that happened, and of course the McKinley tariff that was passed in 1890, which makes it the biggest tariff yet on manufactured goods. So, of course, the farmers are suffering. Their incomes have been really suffering because of that, because their manufactured goods that they need to purchase are more expensive. So in 1892, farmers groups, labor groups, because both sides are really angry at this point. Labor unions are angry, farmers are angry. They decide to come together. And so now we have an alliance between the Farmers Alliance and the Knights of Labor. And these guys are going to be forming the People's Party in Omaha, Nebraska, or rather, the Populist Party. So the big issues that they want to tackle are money issues. The Populists believe that silver should join gold in the currency, which does create that inflation that they need. So they wanted that kind of help to keep up with the mortgage payments and stuff because of the inflation. So what they want is here in the platform. Now, we're going to see a lot of these actually enacted by the progressives during the progressive era. So I'll point out which ones are enacted so you guys can just keep that in mind because a lot of these are important. So first up, we've got the free and unrestricted coinage of silver to gold at a ratio of 16 to 1. Okay, that is totally a populist thing. That's to do inflation, all right? The free and unrestricted coinage of silver. 16 to 1. Remember that ratio. All right. Number 2, the passage of a progressive income tax based on how much one earns. Okay, number 2 is important. This is what becomes the 16th Amendment. This passes during the progressive era. So number 2, 16th Amendment. That's what they want, or what will become the 16th Amendment. All right. Number 3, plan to support farm prices to halt the decline in farmers' incomes by having the government buy the crops at a fixed price. All right, that's another populist thing. Number 4, government ownership of key industries such as railroads, telegraphs, and banks instead of attempts to regulate them. So they want government to assume control of the utilities, essentially. All right, number 5, the direct election of senators by the people, not state legislatures. Okay, this one's a big one. This is also a progressive era amendment that's going to happen. It is the 17th Amendment. So number 5 turns into the 17th Amendment during the progressive era. Number 6, secret ballots, so that nobody know who you voted for. Because remember, this is a big problem in the Gilded Age. Party bosses knew who you would vote for because their hired thugs would drag you in there, see who you voted for, and report back. So, secret ballot kind of gets rid of some of that corruption in politics. All right, then we got the initiative and the referendum process, so that people could propose their own laws and reject laws that passed by state legislatures. All right, so number 6 and 7 are still around. We actually get these initiatives passed during the progressive era. So again, farmers are going to be influential. And then the 8-hour workday for workers. So that, of course, is a labor union sponsored one, and we will eventually see this happen a little after the progressive era, but still, I mean, the ideas are there. So really, the Populist Party platform, a good chunk of it's going to get done, within the next historical time period that we'll talk about. So yeah, pissed off farmers, start to get that ball rolling to get stuff done. So really, you guys understand, the relationship with gold and silver. A good analogy for it is honestly a Wizard of Oz. You guys could find some videos on that. If you type in Wizard of Oz populism, you'll find stuff. But anyways, let's go ahead and move on. All right. So, here's a big breakdown of that issue. All right, how are we doing on time? We're doing okay. Okay, so why was the money issue so important to populists? Well, farmers that actually did have the big debts with their mortgages and farm machinery purchases want to pay back these loans with cheaper money. And how we accomplish that is through inflation. So more money has to enter the money supply. Since we were on the gold standard, the paper money could only be issued if there was enough gold to back it up. So if someone took a gold-backed paper dollar to the bank, they could get $1 worth of gold in return. It's a very limited amount of paper money in circulation. So this kind of system causes deflation. And the populists, of course, it's going to hurt them because a period of deflation is bad for borrowers. So populists and other groups are going to demand that silver be interjected into the money supply so it can include a little bit of inflation. So the money would be worth slightly less, and therefore the farmers would be able to pay back their debts with less valuable money. Trust me, inflation is good for borrowers, but it does hurt banks. So, of course, you could tell banks were probably pushing against stuff like the Sherman Silver Purchase Act and against this whole populist notion of the 16 to 1 ratio for gold and silver. So for every 16 ounces of silver, it would equal 1 ounce of gold. That's essentially what they wanted to do. And of course, they want to bring back the greenbacks. Because again, that included more money in the circulation, more money in the money supply, and therefore more inflation to help out the farmers. But this whole notion of deflation really is a serious problem. You do not want deflation at all in anything. I mean, prosperity is going to decline, there's going to be poverty. It's usually bad economic times when we have deflation. So the farmers are really suffering at this time, and no wonder they wanted to get together. So the Populist Party does become a major player in the 1890s. They want to win that presidency in 1896, and they think they have a hell of a shot doing it, because Grover Cleveland was so unpopular by 1893. They thought they had a shot. And also, the Populists were kind of fired up because the Supreme Court had been striking down the Populist supported laws and stuff. So they're like, yeah, we need to go national. We need to get this stuff done. So the People's Party is going to kind of replace the power of the Democrats in the West. And it replaces the Republicans in the South. So this People's Party is mainly going to go up against, both parties, essentially. And they really feel like they've got a shot at this election because their dude is going to be William Jennings Bryan. So, a couple more things with the Populists. We had talked about they wanted to regulate the utilities, like railroads, telegraphs, telephone, in the interest of the people. They want to do this. And some big names for Populists are going to be Ignatius Donnelly. He helps to form the Farmers Alliance and the People's Party, the Populist Party. He promotes those ideas of monetary reform, the graduated income tax, low interest rates. So he is a very popular person amongst the Populist Party. Another very popular person is a woman, Mary Elizabeth Lease. Because remember, guys, out west, women had political power. So she is going to be incredibly involved with the populist movement, with Kansas farmers protesting against these high mortgage interest rates and railroad rates. So she travels all over Kansas, the far west, the south for Populist Party causes, and she's a very powerful and emotional speaker. She is like a whirlwind, pretty much. So those are some important populist people. But really, the big show right here is going to be the election of 1896. So, here are your three guys. We got William McKinley, again, for the Republicans. We got, Cleveland is not going to get renominated. He's so unpopular. Democrats are going to be like, nah, dude. We're going to back up this other guy, William Jennings Bryan, who was the Populist Party candidate. So it's now like he's a Populist Party / Democratic candidate. And the big issues of 1896 are, the unlimited coinage of silver, so that whole 16-to-1 ratio. William Jennings Bryan is really big on that. He believes government should protect the individuals and the democratic process against big business. Big business is like his freaking enemy. So he travels across the nation, gives hundreds of speeches to try to win that presidency. McKinley's going to be like, yeah, we need to stick to the gold standard. He is totally not for, he wasn't for your working class. So, McKinley's also going to be like, yeah, we need tariffs for a strong economy. He runs his front porch campaign. Seriously, he rarely gets out. He rarely, does speeches. He's just like, yeah, sitting on his porch, just running the show, while William Jennings Bryan is the visual person, the vocal person. So, the Democrats are going to adopt the popular aspects of the Populist Party platform to hopefully win support. They include, the lower tariff, the government regulations of business, the income tax, and they fully supported this whole unlimited coinage of silver thing, the 16-to-1 ratio. But the Populist Party is going to split because Because they feel like William Jennings Bryan didn't really address the labor issue as much. So there's a little bit of a split amongst like labor unions and the farmers when it comes to William Jennings Bryan. So also there's a split amongst the vice presidential candidates as well. William Jennings Bryan's most famous speech that he gives is his Cross of Gold speech. So we will look more of that up later, or actually there's probably videos on it in YouTube, guys, so just remember, Cross of Gold. So, one reason why William Jennings Bryan actually loses is because in the North, remember, he wasn't really paying much attention to the labor union issues, and so labor kind of just doesn't really go for him. Plus, they were being threatened by their jobs as well. They would be threatened by saying, oh, if William Jennings Bryan wins, then you're out of a job. So, yeah, big business is going to kind of control that too. And, yeah, this is what happens. So, William McKinley wins, and essentially the election of 1896 is the end of the Populist Party as we know it. The party had already merged into the Democratic Party by that time. Plus there's discovery of gold in Alaska, so there's no longer this big push to like the unlimited coinage of silver, because now we've got a big supply of gold in the money supply. And a lot of the Populist Party platform issues are going to be picked up by the progressive reformers anyways, like the direct election of senators, federal regulations of business corporations, income tax, and so on and so forth. So this new movement that we have coming around at the dawn of the 20th century is going to be really influenced by what the Populists did, and the progressive era reformers, these middle-class reformers, are going to get stuff done. So guys, that was our whirlwind discussion over politics of the Gilded Age. We will get into more of the Boss Tweed stuff with the progressive era, because I like to use that as a cause and effect kind of thing, because there's a lot of reform on the local level with the progressive era, but there's also a lot of state and national reform too. So stay tuned, guys. The progressive era is definitely a big topic in U.S. history. So hope you guys enjoyed this. I will talk with you later. Bye, guys.